Well, let's bring in three members of Parliament now to discuss the return of Parliament and the speech from the throne. Adam Van Koeverden is the Liberal MP for the riding of Milton and Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Diversity and Inclusion and Youth. You see him there in the middle of your screen. Alex Ruff is the Conservative MP for the riding of Bruce Grey Owen Sound. He's the Deputy Whip for the official opposition. And Matthew Green is the NDP MP for Hamilton Centre and the party's critic for National Revenue, Treasury Board and Public Services and Procurement. Thank you all, first of all, for taking time to speak with me ahead of this important event, the speech from the throne. And let me start with you, Adam Van Koeverden. There are a lot of concerned Canadians watching the COVID-19 cases spike and worried about their health and livelihoods, with new federal modelling out today that warns things could get a lot worse if contacts between people aren't reduced. How should we expect the speech from the throne and your government to deal with those anxieties?
Well, the number one concern of Canadians is definitely still the COVID-19 crisis. There's no question. This thing is not gone yet, and there may be a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel, but that doesn't mean we can take our foot off the gas pedal just yet. We need to be focused on all of the important things that we've been focused on for the last 6 or 7 months: supporting Canadians, supporting their health, and supporting the economy throughout this pandemic. We need to see an increase in testing, and gratefully the provinces have stepped up and started increasing that testing. We need to be pursuing a vaccine to make sure that as soon as possible Canada has access, and I'm grateful for the hard work of my friend and colleague Minister Anita Anand for procuring as much of it as possible. So testing capacity, supporting Canadians through this crisis is the number one issue that I think will be on the top of minds of Canadians, and I'm absolutely certain it will be part of the throne speech tomorrow.
Okay. Alex Ruff, what have your constituents told you they want to hear in the speech from the throne?
Well, locally, obviously, agriculture and rural broadband are of vital importance to rural Canadians. It's something I was hopefully looking to see in the last speech to the throne, and I was a little bit disappointed. So I'm hoping it'll be there tomorrow. I know I saw a press release, I think, or an interview that Minister Baines did earlier in the last 24 hours indicating rural broadband should be in there. So I'm looking forward to that. Obviously, another big concern for our party is unity across this country. We want to be a unified country, so I'm hoping to see the government come out with something that will address making sure this country stays united and not continue to be divided. And
do you have confidence in the way the government's handled the pandemic so far that Canadians should have confidence that the government will continue to handle it properly in the weeks and months ahead?
Well, we'll see if they allow Parliament to get back and allow us get back to work in a full sense. Obviously, there was a lot of good work done by the government right initially. Nobody questions that we're dealing with a pandemic, and we needed to get things out the door quickly. However, 6 months later, there's loads of room for improvement, and I'm hoping to see that collaboration and cooperation amongst the parties, all parties with the government to make sure we're putting the best legislation forward to help all Canadians.
All right, Matthew Green, what are your expectations for the speech from the throne? Lots of people watching to see if it'll be something New Democrats can support. So what do you want to see?
Well, I would agree that there's a divide in this country, but I would suggest that it's not east and west. It's between the working class, the low income, and the ultra rich. In a few days, the the CERB fund is about to come to an end, and people don't know how they're going to pay their bills. We have significant challenges with things like childcare. We have challenges with housing, significant challenges, obviously, in our economy and in our pharmacare. So we are also looking for made in Canada supports that would provide vaccines and PPEs that are built right here and produced right here in Canada to ensure that as we face the second wave, that we are adequately taken care of in our social supports and our healthcare supports.
All right. We had a little bit of a video breakup with you, Matthew, but we can hear you, so we'll push ahead and hope things hold up. Mr. Van Koeverden, we also expect the speech will focus on rebuilding the economy to be more equitable and greener, measures to deal with systemic racism and Indigenous participation in the workforce. That'll be, we are told, outlined in the speech, and other social and economic measures. What's the argument for looking at engineering a social and economic change during a pandemic?
Well, what this pandemic has done is it has definitely underscored a lot of the inequities that exist in Canada. This summer has also been a time to reflect on the systemic racism that exists in Canada. And these are things that we must address. We can't lose sight of all of the important issues that affect Canadians that are highlighted by the pandemic, but many of them, like the environment and climate change, as you've highlighted, are even more important. We actually have an opportunity now to build back better. We have an opportunity to focus on some of the things that this pandemic has exposed, like the problems in our long-term care facilities and what we need to do to support our seniors better. I agree with both of my friends, Alex and Matthew, who I'm glad to be on the panel with both of them. We chat often, but we've got to look at senior supports. We know that this pandemic has affected women disproportionately through their role as primary caregivers and child supporters. I was very, very glad to see, I'm not a father, I don't have kids, but there's a lot of families in my riding, and that $2 billion that we're able to inject into the provincial system so that they didn't have to cut any corners, so that there was absolutely enough money to make those last minute decisions. COVID-19 has been a moving target since the very, very beginning. I think, I agree with Alex, our government has reacted quickly and swiftly and well. It's exposed problems in Canada's systems and problems that need addressing. The first and most pressing is always going to be climate change.
All right. Mr. Ruff, is there anything wrong with the speech from the throne that during a pandemic that looks ahead to rebuilding the country with a greener economy and a more equitable social systems in place? Anything wrong with that approach?
Well, it needs to mean stay focused on the most immediate crisis, and this isn't the time to be re-engineering the whole country. In my viewpoint, we need to stay focused on actually dealing with the crisis at hand and deal with that first and foremost. There's again a new poll that just came out. Canadians are worried about the level of debt that's been put forward here. Nobody's questioning that money had to be spent in order to deal with this crisis, but we need to be doing it in a responsible manner. I am a father. I have a 7-year-old daughter. I do not want her paying for mistakes that we're making now. We need to be, as I said earlier, working collaboratively to make sure we're coming up with the best programs possible that's economically responsible for our future. And we need to work together right across this country and not just sort of stay focused on certain aspects of the country or certain sectors. We need to be leave the provinces that don't get involved in their jurisdictions, but make sure we're leveraging the wealth of this nation that has allowed us to have the great social programs we have, and that is our natural resources, and that is our agriculture sector, which are so key to the fundamental wealth of this great nation that we live in.
Mr. Green, what's your view? Do you think the speech from the throne should have, as we expect it will, a focus about what comes next, what kind of Canada people want once we get through the pandemic, or is it too early for that?
No, I think it's absolutely what needs to happen is we need to share with Canadians our vision for the future, a more caring, compassionate Canada. But we need to go beyond just words, because if there's one thing the Liberal government is good at, it's saying the right thing. What we need to keep a close eye on is whether or not these values are actually identified in the budget. Will they commit to the programs? We've heard them say in the past they were going to deliver childcare. We're still waiting. We've heard them say in the past that we were going to deliver pharmacare. We're still waiting. They know that they have in the New Democratic Party willing partners to increase social safety nets for Canadians in this most historic time, and we hope that we can get back to work for Canadians in that way.
Given what we've heard, Mr. Van Koeverden, and we'll finish on this, and it's about the sitting of Parliament. I understand there's still some conversations about exactly how many MPs should be there in person, how many MPs should be part of the session virtually each day. And it sounds like parliamentarians are going to push ahead with electronic voting from everything I'm hearing. When you hear numbers like this today, does that bolster that case when the federal health officials say, look, unless we get back to some serious distancing measures, this second wave is going to be bad?
Well, I've only been in Parliament for under a year, but what I know is that room is very packed and the lobby is packed. We share only a few bathrooms and it's not a safe place to go back to work right now. It's 2020 and the technology exists for us to debate and ask questions. All members of Parliament were able to ask questions of the government and to pose their ideas and debate throughout the summer. It was a little bit different, but what else wasn't? People were working from home all over the country from coast to coast to coast. Many kids are still not back in class in a conventional manner. So we need to be agile as well, and we need to adapt and innovate as well. And I think that Proc and everybody in the government has done a very good job making sure that we can continue to do our job as parliamentarians, and we will have the opportunity to vote. We just need to be a little bit flexible as how that comes about, because look, we've got the leader of two parties who are currently infected by COVID-19. At this moment, I'd like to reach out to both of them and say that I wish them a quick and speedy recovery.
Mr. Ruff, the numbers are going to be whatever the numbers are going to be when parties come to some sort of agreement, or Parliament does. But the Conservatives, and your deputy leader told me earlier in our program, You're still opposed to the electronic voting idea. I mean, there was a test run, as I understand it, I think it was yesterday, that took over an hour to run a test vote. But given what we hear about the numbers, doesn't that have to be part of the mix, some way to find that members remotely can find a way to vote?
Well, I'm sure we're going to come up with a suitable manner. Yesterday, it had a couple hiccups, but in the end, we made it work. And I'm sure I was just on a call not even an hour ago, again with the House staff, figuring out a way to fix the little tricks from yesterday that weren't working properly to ensure that all our members have the ability to vote. But I mean, that doesn't.
You think you can get there? You think it can happen?
Well, absolutely. I think we're going to be able to get there. But I mean, that doesn't change the fact of the matter. Real Parliament hasn't been sitting since March. We need to bring back everything. And at the same time, as Ontario has demonstrated in their house at Queen's Park, we can get to vote in person, but in the end, we will get a way to vote everybody and still respect all the safety protocols. As the speaker has identified and the House staff, we can put 86 people respecting all the health protocols of the province and the 2-meter spacing into the House the way we are now. And even the Senate's going to bring in, and they're going to leverage their gallery to put over 85 people into their smaller area to conduct their voting. So I think there's lots of ways that we can come up with creative ways to do this.
Mr. Green, a final comment from you on all of this.
Well, I just think that we're at this critical juncture right now. We need to find a way to ensure that in this second wave, we have a critical path forward. We know that there's been significant failures in our social safety nets, EI, housing. All these critical issues need to be answered in these next few weeks to give Canadians the confidence that their federal government is stepping up to the plate in this crisis.
All right, it's going to be a different time as the last number of months have been. But thank you all for your participation in this conversation tonight. We'll see you soon. Take care.
Thank you, Peter.
Thank
nice
you.
to see Alex and Matt.